for everybody to come in. So this guy, Younas, yes, I've met him in the Hanukkah party that I went to in last December. I met a couple of other people too in this party. So like it's interesting that how some people don't know enough. And I was reading yesterday, I'm probably going to get to that later. That's probably the last conclusion thing to show after we watch his interview. And what I agree, and call me completely crazy on this, there's actually a lot of things I do agree with him, but the reason for that is requires a little bit of self-education, how the past started. And if you don't know the past, like you know how when people say Arab conquest, that's right, but do people know the Arab world divide? And not a lot of people know where does that come from. Well, interesting is that if you look into that, you will see how does that connect to, well, Iran and things like that. I'll be honest, when I used to see, you know, the content guy on Twitter, I'll share his page if anybody wants, the content guy on Twitter named Huda Ali, right? I used to think either he's lying at first, or things when he used to yell at Iranians like you kind of stole that from us or whatever the language. I didn't understand that at first till I did a little bit of homework. And though that homework is so freaking important, I tell you, it's to really understand what happened. Now that I did, and I posted that homework in the organization delegation group for Israel so people can have a better understanding, I must say that my eyes freaked out. Like so much has happened after Muhammad's death. And I honestly feel that if you're an Iranian, go for it, whatever the heck you would decide. Because based on how stuff happened, it kind of made me, what's a perfect word? Uncomfortable. How things have been. I mean, how could you erase your own identity? I say this to Pakistanis all the time. Like, either you practice your thing, but don't erase your identity. But based on what happened here, oh my God, I'm just going to say that a lot has in history has happened here. And not many people know about it because many people think like life started yesterday or started in the 1990s. No, stuff started in the early 600 and above, way above that. But people do not know all that history. You study from there, you will know how life started. So I am going to go to this documentary and we are going to proceed. And I'm going to say there's a lot of things I actually do agree with him, what he said, because it has ethical reasons why he did it and how stuff became throughout time. So let's get to it, guys. Okay.
He's the deputy leader of Reform, of course, so great friend of the channel as well. So if you want to come along, I'm sure it'll be a great evening, because obviously the election is just around the corner at that point. So do get in touch via locals at newcultureforum.org.uk and we can send you the venue details. That's 25th of June, it's a Tuesday at 6 p.m. Now, I'm delighted that my guest this week is a somewhat new face on the scene. His name is Younas Sadikiani, and he is a political analyst and influencer. He's with me now. Welcome, Younas.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
You've got to tell me, I know what a political analyst is.
Yeah.
I should do by now.
Yeah.
But can you tell me, when you say influencer, I think most people watching will think social media influencer. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I started my page around September of last year, and my aim with the page was to inform people and educate people, because I was watching mainstream media and I was watching all these different faces coming, and I really thought to myself that these people don't really know what they're talking about and they're pushing the wrong narrative. And because I studied politics and international relations from London School of Economics, and
I'm going to say one thing. He's not lying about that. There's a lot of things that people don't really know, even in history today. It's 2026 and people still don't know enough. That's more as they should, but they still don't. So listen away.
and I have also a background in media.
Yeah.
I came up with this idea that I'm going to voice my opinions backed up by facts.
Right.
So at the time I was working in Chelsea Academy, and I was teaching politics and economics to GCSE and A-level students. And I started making these long format videos online. The first one was about Trump. The second one was about Palestine, Israel. And I just spoke about a host of issues from the rise of Islamism to this whole woke ideology. And I really see these two subjects, the rise of Islamism and the woke ideology, as a threat to Western democracy and Western civilization. And I started speaking about it. I knew some people could say it's controversial. I'm quite brave for some of the things that I say, but I thought a voice like mine is needed, especially from the background that I came from. I'm originally Iranian. I grew up in Iran, and I came to this country when I was 13 years old. And I think I have quite a unique perspective, because I know that Iran is a beautiful country, but it's ruined by the Islamic Republic of Iran.
100% yes. I'm not gonna say he's wrong. That's 100% yes. But one thing I feel he should have done, I'm not sure if he was prepared at the time as much as he is now. He should have shared all of Iran's history, starting above the Pahlavi dynasty, above that, and all the other dynasties that Iran had, so people can have a better understanding what happened in the past and did it ever happen before. And as I posted previously earlier, I'm not sure if anybody watched my last post from yesterday on how I posted about all the dynasty in Iran. Those dynasties are super important in order for people to understand. Like, for example, how did the Kurdish enter the picture? What happened to the Christians? What happened to who in the past? See, this is 1990s, before the Pahlavi dynasty, and then came the Islamic Ayatollah dynasties, right? But before that, in order for people to have a better understanding, because you see, if you study Iran's history, and I don't really like to talk about this because I feel my friends are going to get like hurt or whatever. As Iranians, I try to keep this away from the table. That the Kurdish people weren't treated as equally either. If people look into the past and look into what happened to different ethnic groups and things like that, like there were the Turkics, Baloch, and Arabs, and like the Kurdish, all these ethnic groups that are linked to Iran, and not a lot of the people know what happened to these groups at the time, because all people ever known is like is Persia the only ethnic group? Even I thought that at first. I really did. I'm not gonna lie. I thought Persia is the only people that stuff ever happened to. But when I looked for myself and like seen all these things, it took me one or two tries to really understand, like, oh, who are the Kurds? And my friends are like, we never heard of the Kurdish people before. And there were like, we heard of the Persian people before, but who are the Kurdish people? And that requires to deep look into ancient history of the Iranian people. So I feel this is where he should have shared just a little bit more as a preference of his experience today. And I will get to that part. We're not there yet, but listen away. There's a lot to share in historical facts other than his statements, but yeah, listen away.
Yes. Is it true to say that obviously if you did politics at college, you were pretty interested in politics?
Definitely. It's one of my passions. Yeah.
But this is a kind of relatively new departure for you, the commentating.
Yes, commentating on politics, yes, but these are the ideas that I've had for probably 15 years. I've been following politics very closely ever since, even before I went to university, but especially till then. I'm very interested by ideas and by debates, and whatever it may be. It can be psychology, it can be religion, it can be politics, it can be social issues. So it's really my passion. And I really like to be an influencer, I mean, like in terms of being in front of the camera and, you know, just open people's minds. Because as I said, I've done a little bit of acting in the past as well, but I'm not necessarily an actor. I like to be myself in front of the camera, and hopefully I can make a difference. Well,
being ourselves is often the hardest role of all, of course. But tell me, you mentioned there, when I was asking you about yourself, you said Persian Iranian. Now, in my experience, people who call themselves Persian are very...
See, this is where I feel that it's a stumper, okay? Don't get me wrong. I love the Iranian people. I have nothing against them, nothing at all. But in order from my experience, I only did like two streams on my YouTube page on Iran from start to finish, what I know about it. And I believe I did one or two on my Twitter long time ago, that X is trying to ban a lot of platforms and things like that, you know? So I shared the dynasties before the Pahlavi dynasties. There were other dynasties. So like, if people ask you, like, you know, when Kurds yell online, things like that, this is what I tell my Iranian friend too. is that, well, you should let them know what happened in the previous past, because all of Persia is not around just because the Bible or the Quran or the Torah says so. That was a time period of the Persian people. But like, if you look in the past, like match all the stuff, like how a lot of the people don't even know that Iraq is actually older than Iran. How is that? Because the birth of Abraham, and there's no scripture that the Persian people were ever linked to Abraham or his biological birthplace. So that would be Iraq. So a lot of the people don't know the past, and the Persian people came much later throughout time. Now, that doesn't mean there's no Kurdish, the Turkics, and all these other people who are linked to the land. Not a lot of people know what happened and what was the cause, because all in life history, people only knew about what happened to Persia, right? But that's where I feel that even today, people need to share this part, because let's say tomorrow Iran is free. I'm saying it. Let's say tomorrow is free and something else happened inside local Iran. People are going to get really confused. Like, now, wait a minute. You guys are free. Why the disagreements now? You guys are free. What's happening in Iran that you guys are fighting each other now? So these dynasties are really important to educate and share, like, what happened and why you guys fighting. If you are not going to share this stuff, then people are not going to have an understanding that, okay, now wait a minute, you already got free, why are you fighting now? It's important to know that, because not a lot of the people know the Kurdish conflict in between the Persian people, and not a lot of the people even know there is such thing as a Kurdish Jew. You know, there's a Persian Jew, but not a lot of the people know there is such thing as a Kurdish Jew. And for that, you need to review some of ancient time history for people to have a better understanding. But anywho, let's continue.
Strong about it. They're Persian, they're not Iranian.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the case for you?
Yeah, well, recently I done a genetics test, and you'll be surprised how many different genetics you have. I have like 5% Scandinavian in me, about 5% Baltic, and 1% Native American, which I found amazing. I was like, how did I get in there? But yeah, mostly, but also you have to realize about me that both my parents are half. My dad is half Turkish, half Iranian or Persian, and my mom is half Iranian, half Pakistani. So I have like 3 different countries in me. But the reason why Persians or Iranians are, you know, really rigid about this whole Persian thing is because they think that Iran doesn't really represent them. Because when you say Iran, it just comes across as another Arab country. But we're not Arabs.
Okay, he's right about that. Now let me explain why. It's not, okay, so a lot of the people don't know where the Arab divide comes from. I say this all the time. Yes, just like Jews for Judaism, Arabs were granted Islam. The only difference is that Judaism came before for Jews, but Islam came like after. But that doesn't mean that the Arabs are not old just as Jews. They are, because of ancient time periods of Abraham in Iraq, ancient time periods of the Hashemite kingdom, which is where some Christian actually told me this, that some Jews crossed the miracle of rivers, which is the Jordanian River. So all this time period is still back there, right? That doesn't mean things didn't exist. But what people don't know is, where does the Arab divide come from? And how does it come from? Because if anybody ever observed Arabs yelling at Iranians, and I used to think like Jews all the time, I'm not going to lie, I used to think that Jews are telling the truth and maybe the Arabs are being beat. But when I read for myself, there's a really, really big reasons why Arabs hate Iranians. It's not because they're Persian or what people think it is. It's deeper than you actually know. And it takes a lot of studying and understanding to where does that hate come from. And I'm going to get there. So he's right about that. He's not Arab. And what amazes me is that when I was studying this ancient history of Arabs, how could they possibly delete their own identity and adopt stuff from the Persian culture and terminate? I'm going to get to all that. That's not the basic part yet. This is the beginning. We're going to get into the middle. We're still in the beginning. But listen, he's right about that. 100% I agree with him. Yes, he is. He's right.
B, we have our own culture, and C, we have our own language. And the name only changed about 70 years ago, because it was called Persia before Reza Shah Pahlavi the first. And the only reason why he changed it was he had a little bit of a beef with the British, because we had the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, and the oil of Iran or Persia was owned by the British for like 100 years. And when Reza Shah came into power, he said, well, first of all, I'm going to change the name and call it Iran, because we're going to nationalize everything. So it was that. But I think he made a mistake, because another reason is that when you say Iran, especially for people that are not aware of the Middle East. They just think, oh, another war-torn country in the Middle East. But when you say Persia, people think of this, oh my God, Cyrus the Great, the Persian Empire. It brings you better images to your head. And
okay, so one thing I am going to review, let me see if I can catch it while he's talking. I'm going to pause this video for a minute and pull it up. So like, the thing I feel he should have said, because like I said, this is really, really important. Let's try it, is in the exact order. How many empires ruled Iran before Persia, as books speak? Paragraph. Let's see what we can find, because it's true. Like I said, that because if it didn't, where did all the other ethnic groups come from? Like I said, Iran is not just Persian. There's more ethnic groups, and the question is, what connection do they have? Where does it come from? Okay, so here we got something. We got something, guys. I'm going to pull it up and share my screen before I continue his statement. So share my screen. Window. Okay, here it is. Read away, guys. So put this to the computer screen. Okay, here it is. So it means either Iranians are, like, I respect them, like I said, but in order to educate people to understand your country and who are all these other groups and where the conflicts come from, that's where all this comes in. So before what we call Persian Empire, the land modern Iran was ruled by a small number of earlier powers, but not many full empires. The same historically, scholars usually point out 2 to 3 major ruling civilizations before Persia rose. So what the book said, but there's a lot more before that. The earliest known as Elam, which has existed far as around 2700 BC and ruled parts of Iran and many centuries, its own kings and systems of the government. After Elam weakened and eventually destroyed outside forces like the Assyrians, the new power Medes, the Medes formed the kingdom in the 7th century BC, controlled by Western Iran before overthrow. After that came the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, who defeated Medes, created like the first Persian Empire. So in simple terms, most history books recognize as Elam, Median kingdom, as main ruling powers before Persia. Meaningly, 2 major empires, proto-empire, ruled Iran before the rise of the Persian Empire, right? And then there are other empires, as I posted. I'm going to see if I can share that on my screen, or at least share the link anyway that I posted previously, that these empires are just as important, even though people feel like they're not important. There is, because then people are not going to have a better understanding what exactly happened to Iran in the past, and why is there so much divide. Where does the divide come from? Every country has some type of divide because there's many ethnic groups linked to the land. I know Jews believe that they're one ethnic group linked to Israel, but the rest of the lands, they're not like that. Nowhere close. So like here, I posted this right under my YouTube page, and you guys can see it on my Twitter. What I wrote, Par-Iranian, like there's many other dynasties that have existed. And I feel like some Iranians, when they give an interview, they really should share that in order to understand history itself today. Like, for example, not a lot of the Kurdish people know why do the Kurds hate the Persian people. That's a mystery for a lot of the newcomers. Like, oh, wait a minute. I thought Iran was all of Persia, and you come from where, and why do you hate these people? Because people really don't know. They don't know what the heck happened and why this divide, where does it come from? Nobody knows. But yes, let's listen to the rest of his interview, and we will get to that too. This is what I disagree with him. He should have shared some of that. He's not telling much about the Iranian people. That's just one perspective, but yeah. Okay, so play.
I always make this joke that if I'm the leader of Iran or the president of Iran in the future, I will change the name to Persia, because it has a better ring to it, you know?
Yes. I mean, when I was sort of growing up, obviously a long time before before you. We did actually, well, it was interesting, the Shah was called either the Shah of Persia or the
Yeah.
Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
I suppose more people knew him as being the Shah of Iran. You obviously, presumably until the age of 13, grew up in Iran.
Yes.
Did you? So what was, you obviously would have been there completely during the time of the Ayatollah Khomeini, I mean,
Yes,
to begin
yes.
with.
Yeah.
But presumably your parents knew the old regime.
Yeah. They did. Well, my grandparents.
Yes.
And they grew up in that era, and they always say nice stories. And they say to me how rich they were, how free they were.
Yeah.
And my granddad.
Yes, because the Pahlavis were very rich before they were the Safavid and other dynasties. If you look at my on my Twitter, and I just posted it on my YouTube stream at the bottom. That's the link is shared on Twitter. Read all those dynasties. So I believe, according to ancient history, the richest one were the Pahlavis. But yeah, so he's on a good start. I'm not going to say anything that I disagree with him. He's on a pretty good start. But yeah.
For example, used to work for an American company from my mom's side, and he used to make a lot of money to the point he had like many houses, and he had 4 kids, and they were all privately educated. And as soon as the revolution happened, all of that stopped.
Yeah.
And they threw him in prison actually because he was working for an American electric company, which is insane.
Right.
And I think the Islamic Republic of Iran has really taken Iran back 1,400 years.
Well, you see, for most people, I think that looking at social media,
Yeah.
they would see these, clips of very Western-looking women, going to university, all of these things, and of course, cut to the scene today, and it's entirely different. One thing that I do know about Iran, obviously, it's an extraordinarily youthful country, isn't it? I mean,
It
its
is extremely.
population is something like 50-60% youth, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's such a shame because these youth are just going down the drain. And personally, I might be biased, but I really do think Persians are a very special culture and genetics.
Yes.
They're very smart.
Okay, so this is where I need to look in. So I feel like he's not correct there. That doesn't make any sense according to the previous dynasties as much as he says. I'm not saying he's wrong, but let's look in if he's correct. How many cultures ruled Iran before Persia? Persian culture. That's a tricky question to look into. Let's dig in and let's see what it says. I believe he's not correct there. I believe he's not. Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot. Okay, let's see if I can share my screen and let you guys see it too. That is a lot of cultures for someone new to actually keep up with. That's a hell of a lot of cultures. So share my screen and let's see. So it's on my screen and I'm going to put it here. So I am going to share this with you guys. So before the Persian culture became the dominant on the land of Iran was home of several different cultures, not just one or two. Historians don't give an exact number, which means even this is not enough what Iran was about. Even this itself, even though it gave like a portion of whole different cultures, but even this itself is not enough for Iran's actual information, how many cultures it actually had. So look, but most of the around 5 to 8 major cultures were many smaller ones before the Persian identity formed. It was the Elamite civilization, earliest culture for 2,000 years long. Goyatins, mountains tribes who ruled parts of western Iran. Kassites influenced western Iran and Mesopotamia. That would be areas of Iraq. Parains culture influenced in the northwest of Iran. Manians, Midas, and then let's go down here. What else does it say? Plus a small Neolithic Bronze Age village culture spread. And before the Persian culture, Iran had 5 to 8 major cultures. And of course, the Safavid, that was a culture, even though ChatGPT did not give me that. I made a stream about that. So it had more cultures than that not a lot of the people bring about, like this one. This would be like this culture right here. Where did it go? Kassites. The Kassites would merge a little bit with the Iraqis because that's Mesopotamia. And not a lot of the people know this stuff in order to understand Persian, because, for example, I didn't believe it at first. I really didn't. I'm saying it on this podcast. I didn't believe it at first until I read it for myself. When I seen that the Pahlavis did not respect the Kurdish culture, that gave me a red flag thing to think about. If that's just one culture, what happened to the other cultures? You know, that's just one culture and it wants to make it the official culture of the country, but that's not all of Iran. You get what I'm saying? Again, anybody Iranians watching, I don't hate Iran and I don't hate Persians, but like as an ex-Muslim who's educating people about his country, and other than leaving Islam, if you want people to understand the Iranian people, you must be sharing every single thing, not just one portion. That's just one portion. That's not all of linked details that's linked to your country. And you're just giving one ethnic group of a perspective that it should be just this ethnic group for Iran, not all of them. When Iran has many ethnic groups, the world just has never looked into it, but it does. Back to his speech. Crazy, huh? But yeah, that's just one perspective that he's giving. Not all perspective what Iran is, but just one.
They are good-looking people. They are very charismatic. They're very funny. They're very warm. And fundamentally, the Islamic Republic of Iran, these people are not even Iranian. These people are actually Arabs. These are Shia Arabs that conquered Iran 1,400 years ago.
Okay, so this is what I am going to share, okay? A lot of the people really get confused about the Arab world and what it actually is. There's a really big divide in the Arab world that not a lot of people actually know about, and why Arabs like debate each other. And again, I'm friends with Arabs, and they taught me too. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know that much. I sat with the right Arabs who can give me a better understanding what exactly happened in their world and why do they debate this stuff. So I'm going to share my screen and see if it's going to let me before I go back to the video. So I'm going to go to my channel and share my recent post. There's the stream, go all the way down. Okay, so we're going to start from here. I hope everybody can see my screen. We're going to start from here. Okay, first picture. First picture. Here we go. So Arabs remain divided due to two parts, and how Arabs, like what you call it. So I was reading about this. There are the Ali Hussein worshipper Arabs, and the ones who want to keep the language, tradition, culture. That would be the ones who accept the other than Abu Bakr, but also accept their father as Ishmael, right? So right here, the faith to two Ali Husseini, justice, resistance. And even though these Arabs are one family, but after Muhammad's death, they had a big divide. They had a big divide, and it's amazing how they kind of terminated their identity versus these. So like when you see Arabs yell at Iranians, they don't yell because they hate or subtly hate. They hate because of a certain story that has happened in the past. Now the Persian people, they kind of got, well, stuck into it, you know, because Shia is not an ethnic group, it's a faith. It was forcefully enforced by Arabs onto the Persian people, and versus the actual ethnic Arabs who never changed their identity. Their dressing, almost everything about them, they have never changed. And the Shia Arabs actually kind of deleted their Arab identity. So if you ever see Arabs yell at Iranians, this is why, because unfortunately, call me completely stupid in this, it is historically true. It is true. Next photo. If this thing is going to let me make a little bit bigger, I don't think it is, but I'm going to try. Is it going to let me? No, it's not going to let me more bigger, is it? I'm going to try. No, it's not going to let me make it any bigger. Okay. So this, the path of Shia perspective and path of Abu Bakr, but at the same time, they're going to keep their father's identity, which would be the Ishmaelites. And the death of Prophet Muhammad, after that, this divide came between them. The divide was who's going to lead the Islamic Caliphate. They believed that Ali should lead it, But these Arabs also believe that we shouldn't have to change our identity and culture to lead Islam itself. If you look at it, some of it happened in the future, right? Some people, like, due to how they interpret the book, they change the culture. And these Arabs always believe that no, you should not change the culture, which is why when they say, okay, you've been too Arabized or you stole the language, it seems stupid at first. Believe me, it does. But they're actually telling the truth. After reading all that, oh, makes sense. Why do they tell you that? It's true. Like right here, Harita Medina Muslim Ummah united. Once upon a time, there was a unite. All the Arabs come from one world until this divide. And the divide comes from after Prophet Muhammad's death. Now, here's the thing. Jews were everywhere, part of this. Jews lived in Iran, they lived in Iraq. Not all of them are from Israel. There's some Jews who are from ancient ancestor Iraq. Some Jews are from ancient ancestor of Arabia, ancient ancestor from Persia. So Jews lived everywhere. However, even though the Arabs didn't really connect with the Jews in ancient times, this was their ummah until slowly a transformation came into the Arab world. We'll get there. So as the time flies, we did see this happen, like some countries from the Arab world, places like UAE and Egypt, I believe they slowly started to connect with the Jews as the time flew by, and they have no intentions of like beating them, versus the opposite ones who want them dead. These would be the Shia Arabs. If only I could make this picture a little bit bigger, it would make it so much easier, but I can't on my stream. I wonder why. Try clicking it if you can on my YouTube post, if you can make it bigger. So this is the people who changed their identity. They physically got rid of their Arab identity. Even though Arabs believe, as the Ishmaelites, we are not going to get, and Abu Bakr, we are not going to terminate our heritage. We are not going to terminate our culture. We are not going to terminate our actual look as Arabs just for the spread, which they didn't. But these guys did. So slowly, according to time, as the time flew on and on and on, they adopted the Turkic culture. They adopted a lot of culture and terminated the Arab culture from their DNAs. Call me dumb. Even, not a lot of the people know that the Shia of Iran's, like the previous leaders in the past or early past, the leader was actually an Arab. But they kind of terminated their Arab identity, and that's what the Arabs hate about that. How dare you terminate your identity? You are one of us, and you have one father, and you terminate your Arab identity. They did. Throughout time, they did. And they became very different from the current Arabs, places linked to like Jordan or Morocco or Saudi Arabia, the main one, and all these other places. It became a historical divide between them. In fact, let me review something very important that I said this in a delegation group. If you look at before October 7th, right? Who was impacted before October 7th when Saudi was going to agree with Israel? Of course, these guys. These guys were impacted. Oh, your betrayal to this, that. That's why they hate each other, because they have two different paths. They have two different views, away from what extremists do. The extremists are just fighters. It doesn't matter. They fight in the name of God. Extremists don't have a brain of your own. And the education that I'm showing you, extremists would not show in a million years. But this is the truth behind the door. So here we go. The Shiites became more radicalized, and these guys literally believe in unity. They believe in building. What Sharia law says, that you're supposed to build for the better, things like that. And some of these Arab countries did that, along with their Arab identity from Abu Bakr and father Ishmael. All these people never deleted their identities, but the Shia Arabs did. And slowly as the time flew by, it literally says that they chose to terminate their Arab identity. So when people say that Shias are not real Arabs, believe that anger is real. That anger is so real. You're going to see Arabs curse at them all the time, because it's kind of like they've been betrayed in their blood. Like, hey, how dare you erase our culture from your DNA? This is what we look like, dressed like we're Arabs. And they did it. They physically betrayed their own blood with time. See, here are the flags. Some of you can see them, because I don't know why this thing is not going big. I wish it would. I wish it would go more big so I can do it. Is it? It's still not showing the whole thing. I don't know why it's doing that. But like, see, there it is. Arab, our loyalties to Ali, appearance, everything, and how it says slowly, we chose to change our identity. And then there are these Arabs, we choose to keep our identity. So this is the right, this is the left, according to this picture. But yes, the left are the biblical Arabs. There's Jordan, there's Egypt, there's Saudi Arabia a little bit farther down. If this picture could get a little bit bigger, Saudi Arabia, and all these are the biblical Arabs who are linked to the biblical lands. They never moved, they never left, they never did anything. They never left their territories. These are, I don't know what's the perfect word to call them. These are the Arabs who launched the caliphate to all these other lands that were never linked like to anything. They kind of changed the culture into the Shia culture, if that makes sense. Like Lebanon, everybody knows Lebanon was Christian. Iran was Persia. Iraq is also linked to Arab culture. I don't know why this thing messed up because of ancient Abraham being born there. Bahrain came later, but see, it literally says that they chose to change their identity, and their identity is stolen from the Persian people. That's not Arab DNA. That's why Arabs get mad at each other that, hey, you're one of us. How dare you steal someone else's identity? This is who you are, and we gave it to you. So when you see like spaces like ever Doctor Who that debate, just actually really listen to the guys, because sometimes he can actually be really right based on what he's saying. It just takes a couple of good understanding to really understand what the guy's saying. It takes self-education and to look in. So it may feel offensive at first, but when you really look in, you'll understand what the guy is talking about. And it took me the hard way. So it's true. This is not their identity. They stole this identity from the Persian people, and they terminated their Arab identity, and there been a divide ever since. These are the biblical Arabs. These lands are in the Bible labeled like Jordan would be the Hashemites, ancestor of the Hashemites, and Iraq's is the Babylonian Mesopotamian ancestors. So these Arabs never left. It's just the religion came last, and the divide came after Prophet Muhammad's death. And here you have it when you go to the last picture, it looks something like this. They choose to keep their Arab identity due to the father of Ishmael, their father, and these chose to leave their father, change their identity, and remember what culture did their father give them. They chose to erase it, terminate it. It says it right here, address everything left behind to please the new Islamic Caliphate leader, as in Ali, and be the follower of him. And that, but they didn't want to leave their father or Abu Bakr. The Arabs refused to do that. That no, we are not going to change our identity. We are not going to change anything about ourselves to lead a caliphate. That's where the divide comes from. They want to stay Arabs just the way they are, with their culture, their heritage, their everything, even though their religion came first and Judaism came first. Like I said, the Jews were there. Jews were everywhere. Israeli Jews are not the only Jews. They're the Iraqi Jews. They're the Arabian Jews, who some people call the Kurdish. Many type of Jews who live there. But just because they didn't connect with the Jews doesn't mean they were never there. It's just the religion came later. After the Prophet died, this divide, these are the Arabs who changed their identities for the better. Not a lot of people know that they were Arabs. They feel like, oh, they stole something, which they did. They stole the Persian identity and from the Turkish people and transformed the Shia Caliphate dressing into something like this, versus the actual Arabs who never changed themselves. They're the biblical Arabs, and they never change anything about themselves, as in order from their father, which is Ishmael, and Abu Bakr, which they fulfilled, and things like that. But as a presence of their father who gave them the culture and everything, they never change. Now, not a lot of people know that shit. They don't. They think life started yesterday, but this is where the divide and the change comes from. All Arabs belong to Abraham, just like Jews do. Father Ishmael, but the divide came after Prophet's death. They chose this path. The Arabs never left their path. They refused to do it, and they refused to change who they are and remain Arabs just the way they look and dress like. And these are the same Arabs on the left that are the biblical Arabs versus these ones. These ones are not. These ones are not the biblical Arabs. They've stole identity, they spread a caliphate, and they want the caliphate to grow. They don't care about other Muslims. They don't care about other groups. Even though some sources say that the Shia Arabs do have some link with the Catholics, like to help them out and stuff, which is completely crazy, according to studies. that, hey, your scripture says that you do not want to help people, you do not want to support people, but unexpectedly sources say they have helped Catholics before. How crazy is that? But yeah, they have. So this is pretty interesting. So when he says that Arabs did this, he's not lying. It all comes from here. And this is why one of the reasons why Saudi Arabia hates, it's not because of the Pahlavists or things like that. That is way after. Everything starts from here. So when people say there were once upon a time, there wasn't, I'm not going to say there wasn't, but also comes the divide. The divide comes all after Prophet Muhammad's death, and who did the betrayal? And it was the Shia Arabs who give the blood betrayal, change themselves, change what their father has said, change almost everything about them, change the language, and adopt the Farsi and Persian culture versus their actual identity, Arab culture. And that hate has never left in front of Arabs because, like I said, they were an Arab, and how dare they delete their identity? It's amazing. Like it, sometimes listen to who's yelling. As I said, some people might see Doctor Who, they're yelling all the time, but really listen to why he's yelling. This is why. Right over here. It's in front of everyone. This is why. Because the Arabs feel they've been betrayed. That, hey, how dare you betray your father? This is who we look like, dress like, and this is what our fathers told us to dress like, look like, speak like, everything. How dare you leave the DNA of the Arabs? And they did. They left it and became the Shiite Arabs and launched their own caliphate, changed their dressing, changed almost everything about them. And that's why Iran, what he is saying, Younas, he's not wrong either. He's actually 100% correct. It's just people need to look into it, and not a lot of the people know what happened in the past. They really don't know, and they feel like life started yesterday or 3 years ago. That is not true. So back to the footage. Here we go. Where did we leave off?
Finding a therapist you actually connect with can
Interesting,
feel like a
isn't it?
lot to ask,
Not a
but
lot of people know that.
82% of
That's how
BetterHelp
life
members
started.
Back then, it took us 200 years to get rid of them. And now this time is their second coming.
Right.
And unfortunately, the first time they conquered us, the whole thing mixed.
Yes.
And if you actually look at them, majority of these ayatollahs and these imams, they're all Iraqi, like they were born in Najaf. Like the whole Shia ideology is not even Persian. And if you know about the Islamic culture or Islamic tradition, there were two groups of people: Sunnis that only believe in Muhammad, and then when Muhammad dies, it splits into two. So people that were followers of Ali and his son Hassan.
I just showed those pictures. Remember, he's talking about it now. I just showed those. And then, of course, those who changed the culture versus those who never did change the culture and remained Arabs, what Arabs look like, dress like, speak like, everything.
And his grandson Hussein, and followers of just Muhammad. And what happened was that there was a lot of bloody fights between the Shias and the Sunnis, to the point that the Shias were pushed out of Saudi Arabia, and they had to almost come and conquer Iran, So they have no resemblance to Iranian culture, because the Iranian religion.
He's probably the first person I'm going to agree to. He's 100% correct. Based on what I showed you guys, he's not incorrect. He's 100% correct.
Religion is Zarathustra or Zoroastrianism, which is, I'm not a religious person, but if you look at Zoroastrianism, it's a very fun religion.
Okay. However, there is one thing I'm going to say, and I told this to a lot of my friends. Even though I'm not Iranian, and the crazy part is my name is Iranian, but I'm not a biological Iranian. But yeah, okay, so yes, Zoroastrian, the religion, it has linked to Hinduism, it has linked to Buddhism, early ancient pagan religions, right? So one thing people who must understand, you can read this for yourself. I wrote an article on my Holyhood Twitter page about the ancient pagan religions, times of Abraham, which he was against, and the three religions that came later and that Abraham accepted himself. Obviously, you know what they are: the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so, if you're a Christian or a Jew, even someone Jewish, you cannot be a Zoroastrian Jew, because Zoroastrian is back in the pagan days where you worship different idols, different practices, things like that. You can't be a Zoroastrian Jew. You can be a Jew, but not a Zoroastrian Jew. Or you can be a Christian, but you can't be a Zoroastrian Christian, because Zoroastrians don't accept Jesus. Same policy for, Islam. They don't accept Allah, because they're from the ancient pagan days with Hinduism, Buddhism, where multiple faiths once ran, that Abraham was born and he was against. It's all about the reading in the early past, start to finish, but yeah.
It's almost like every single month or every single week, just find an excuse and have fun and party. Women are liberated. Cyrus the Great was the first king in history to have a human rights bill of rights for his people. Women were 2,500 years ago were doing like ministerial roles in terms of governing the country, and you fast forward 1,000 years, Islam, where women are second-class citizens, which is a very odd juxtaposition.
Well, what do you, therefore, Younas, what do you think of the Western response, in particular, I'd say the Western feminist response, to the various demonstrations, protests, which have in fact ended in death, that have happened in Iran recently? I mean, you don't hear much about them from, at least from the West, do you?
Yeah, and I think the Iranian women are very brave, and I really salute them. However, this is not just a women issue. This is an Iranian issue, because as a matter of fact, majority of people that are being shot and killed and thrown in jail in Iran are men, and they're being hanged. We recently had this rapper called Too Much Salehi.
Yes, I saw.
And he's been sentenced to death because he just had a few songs criticizing the regime, and that happens all the time in Iran, you know. And it's unfortunate because Iran could have been Dubai times 1,000. It is a gold mine. It's the second highest oil producer in the world. It's the second highest gas producer in the world. Like it could have easily been in the top 5 GDPs of the world. And now our GDP per capita is 115th in the world. We are one of the poorest countries in terms of people's income. So people are forced to have one meal a day. You know, which is unfortunate. And if you want to really look into it, there's a few different reasons why this happened. And the first reason is that the Shah was overthrown, was because America and Britain saw Iran improving very fast. And the Shah had nationalized the oil, and he had increased the price of oil. And that's why you had the energy crisis in the 1970s. So President Carter...
I think one day I should show, I'm not sure if I should, I would like some votes if anybody's interested. So I saved a documentary a long time ago about the Shah. It's about what he stated on the 60-minute talk, stuff he stated about the Palestinians, how he felt for the Israelis, things like that, you know? I mean, his own personal perspective. I'm nobody to tell him he's a good guy or a bad guy. He just gave his own personal perspective, you know? But I feel like people should read about the Shah for their own perspective and decide from there what they feel like, you know? Because there's a difference when people share a leader versus when he actually becomes a leader. For example, I believe an Israeli, 2-3 Israelis told me this, and I felt like, nah, why would the Shah would do that? He told me about the White Dynasty or whatever, where Prince Reza Pahlavi, there was another dynasty, it's not hitting me the name, and it was Pahlavi's time, that people fought something about religion or whatever, and he was too modern. It's not hitting me what it was, but it was a fight. Then a Christian from America who's a retired teacher told me the same thing, but they've been fighting, they had another fight. I'm like, what is that fight? So when I looked it up, it was there. So Iran itself, it has many things. I mean, the Shah may come back, but that doesn't mean just based on what he's saying, it's going to be exactly the same thing. Because according to the past, even when the Shah was in charge, there are still people who still exist today who had their differences with him. That's the best way I could put it. So, like, he may say in his perspective supporting the Persian ethnic group compared to all the other Iranian groups, but, like, okay, as I said, just it's best for people to study about him. And if you want, I can show one day his 60-minute interview on a stream based on what he said. And then based on that, people can really decide, like, what do you think of the guy, you know? Because in the end, even if he does comes back, and I keep telling this to all my friends, there are going to be people who are going to be okay with him. And then there's still be the people who are not okay with him. And that requires to look into, well, the past, which were those groups that were, why do they hate him? And if people are not going to look in, they're not going to know where does the conflict come from and, well, why? But yeah.
In conjunction with the British, they were like, oh, what do we do to overthrow this guy? They basically find the stooge, which is Khomeini, and they knew, unfortunately, one of the unfortunate things in Iranian culture, but that has eroded away, is that people couldn't say no to Islam back in the day. So they say, okay, we're going to use Islam and we're going to, also use the neo-Marxists within the Shah's regime to overthrow the Shah, and they did. And I'm not blaming just the American and the British.
Okay, so one thing I am going to say, the Shah himself was a Muslim. In fact, his father, people can look this information up. I don't really need to share on my screen because I'm not trying to offend anyone, but people need to have an understanding about all the converts who leave the religion, but they also have to share a little bit of history. What's life like? What was stuff like at the time? So Shah himself was also a Muslim. He never converted. In fact, I was reading about him. Did he ever turn into Zoroastrian culture? And sources still say no, he didn't, because his father, in fact, these are words from the Indian people. I didn't even know that his father joined forces with early days of Pakistan, and they were really, really close. And he was not in good terms with India. And when I tell people, like in the Iran wise, that as much as you want to be close allies with India, but that also requires for you to accept, Afghanistan and all these other places that are linked to the same ancestry, kind of like Hinduism and Zoroastrians are kind of like mini sisters. And so if you look into the internet, you will see that the Farsi language is very similar to Afghan culture and somewhat Baloch culture, but mostly Afghan culture, right? And now when Persian people say but Iran is different, but Iran has many groups and not all of Iran is Persia. And Persian language does not really attract with all of Iran's history, because Iran's history is also, so if you're going to accept places like India in the future, and of course you would have to accept Afghanistan, because that goes back to early ancient Indian history and their ancestry time. If you're not going to accept that, then what road are you actually taking? That just does not make any sense. You want to be friends with the nation, but you do not want to accept their ancestry when you go back with them before the arrivals of the Abrahamic religions. I haven't really read about the Christians, like the Christian Empire in Iran. I don't know that much about that, but this has an impact. If you're going to adopt these nations, you're going to have to accept their ancestry, which is linked to you before the arrival of the dynasties linked to Islam, which is Safadi and later the worst of the worst Ayatollah. But yeah.
They did what they had to do because of their own self-interest. Another reason why I think the Shah was overthrown was because of religion. I really do think so. And the Islamic Republic in the last 45 years, one of the only achievements of the Islamic Republic has been that it downgraded Islam and the mixing of religion and politics together in people's minds in Iran. Yes. So majority of Iranians, they say we're not Muslim anymore because of what Islamic Republic done. Majority actually support Israel, you'd be surprised.
Yes.
And that's why I made videos about the rise of Islamism in the UK.
Okay, one thing I am going to say, okay, and he may agree with me, he may disagree with me, because as someone who's living in America, yes, he could travel to Israel as a Iranian compared to him living in Iran currently, okay? So yes, if you watch the 60-minute video of the Prince Reza Pahlavi, you're going to see his views. He had stuff to say for the Palestinians, but also Israel at the same time, his personal vision. I actually recorded that, but I never published it because I don't want people harassing me with hate speeches based on a statement, which is not mine, it's the leaders. I'm just showing it hey, who agrees with this statement? Yes or no, share your thoughts. So based on that, I never published it. I still have it saved. But okay, no, if you how should I put this? If you are allies with Israel, but you also want to have a free Kurdistan, your triangle is not going to last with that in the picture. I'm just going to land my plane there. So it's either keep your promises with the Iranian people or free the Kurds. I know my best buddy Israelis are listening, but that is the plane. It's either stick to the Iranian side, or when you say the Kurds, some Israelis want Kurds to have a free state. The day you ever support that, your Iranian relationship is forever going to be dead, because they are our rivals. They're not allies, they're rivals. And when it comes to the Kurds having the state, have you ever actually seen a Kurdish flag? I'm sure people have. It's the same color code as Iran. red, white, green, the lion versus the sun. The day that flag ever rises, that relationship is not going to last with the Israelis, because Free Kurdistan means connects Iraq, some of Iraq, but also Iran. So, and best example I could give, which I told many of my Israeli friends, is that you're never going to see a Kurdish Jew be loyal to a Persian Jew when it comes to the land. Persian Jew is going to remain Persian Jew. Kurdish Jew is going to remain with his Kurdish ancestry, and they're not going to ever like each other when it comes to the land of freedom. So this is where I disagree with him. No, if the day Israel chooses a side or ever chooses to give the Kurdish an independent state, it's going to be the war with the Iranian people forever, because they are rivals. They're not friends, they're rivals, and they hate each other.
Because I can see signs of it happening here in these societies.
You grew up as a Muslim, is that right, or what?
I grew up as a Muslim, and I'm not a Muslim anymore.
When did you?
About when I was 15 years old. Because when I came to this country, I went to a Christian school, and then I started learning about the Bible, and that's when my obsession started, because I studied the Quran when I was.
I think that's one of the reasons it inspired him to convert. He went to, I guess, a religious school or something. I went to a public school. In fact, when I went to Averill Park, right, back in the early 1990s, there was only, I believe, one Native American student, two Muslim students, which were me and my sister. My brother doesn't count because he only stayed for kindergarten. It was me and my sister and one Hindu student back at the time. As time went on, up to all the way up to 2000, after 9/11 and on, and we went to graduation. And before I shifted to Texas, I ended up graduating in Texas. People had many questions for us, things, and of course, views changed after 9/11. So, like, being in a public school like that has inspired me to educate people today, answer questions today of different culture, including my own, learn more history in my own religion, and of course other practices, which is why I don't have a difficult time talking about them. I don't debate, but I speak very openly about different perspective and views. And I think in his case, if he really, something about a public Christian school inspired him, and he felt, looking at Iran, knowing Iran is a dump hole, then I guess his conversion was accurate. I'm not saying everybody who converted is not inaccurate, but being in another world, reading their religion book, going into their school. So it's kind of like you already have them as family, and you still want to have connection with them. You don't want to let it go. Somehow you still want to have them as family. Sometimes when those emotions attract, it inspires people like, hey, but I go to the school, I be around them every day. I can't just ditch them all to a narrative. And I guess his conversion was pretty well accurate. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with it, because many Iranians, based on what happened to them, yeah, but it was pretty accurate.
I was a kid, and then when I came here, I studied the Bible, and I was like, they're saying two different things, and I became an atheist. But then I'm not an atheist now. I was an atheist for 10 years, and I was reading all these Richard Dawkins books, The God Delusion, and all these people, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris.
Yeah.
And I also think there is a certain emptiness to atheism as well. So at the moment, I would consider myself a spiritual person. I believe in God. I believe God is an energy and frequency that flows through everything. And there's a huge difference between religion and spirituality, because religion is control and oppression, and spirituality is freedom and your own connection to God.
Yes. Yeah. But with your, you left Islam, or you no longer were a Muslim at 15. I mean, one of the things that many people know about Islam is that, you know, basically you were an apostate.
Apostate.
So does that mean that therefore you should be put to death?
Yes.
So what happened when you left?
No, it doesn't. Well, fundamentally, I come from a very liberal family, so they didn't say nothing to me. However, Islam has done that throughout history, that they scare people. They either force people, and this is the truth about Islam, and, you know, people are scared to say it.
Okay, look, this is where I disagree with them, and people are going to be like, what? You finally disagree with them? But I do. Okay, number one. According to the stuff where he comes from, like the Shia dynasty and things like that, it would happen in his country from the Shia tribe, and Arabs changing their identity, almost everything about them, and leaving their Arab culture identity, and adopting the Persians' identity, stating that they're from this culture when historically, DNA-wise, they are not. They're just people who stole the identity of them and leading a Shia tribe, which is not an ethnic group. The ethnic group would be Arabs who bought the religion, okay? Historically, in Sharia law, if you look at it, the way that they use Sharia law, I've explained this before, words from my own mother-in-law, who's like, 60 years old. She says that the way that they use Sharia law is for their own benefit. They don't really use it on the countries. Like when I asked some of the Jordanians that, hey, please tell me, how is Jordan today? Is it still as it is? It was like 6,000 years ago or like 40 years ago, whatever, right? And she's like, not much has changed in Jordan. So the way Sharia is actually used then to help the community, when that's one of the commands, you're supposed to help the community, which would be your country. Health benefits, things like that. So instead, as always, the people are being jailed more than the needs. What the Sharia law says is you're supposed to give them needs. That's an order. And they don't, the politicians, as he stated, they don't follow it. And those who enforce more and more, well, politicians just kill them. So this, when he says Islam is Islam, I disagree with him because his tribe is different. Okay, so I said this before to my Jewish friend, and I actually inspired her that you should go on public debate. You're pretty decent and educational for a lady who's 60 years old. You inspired me, didn't you? Okay, so Orthodox Jews, that's the best Jew I can think of. If Judaism come into your official government as your official laws that you need to follow every single Judaism law in the book, like even knowing that some Jews eat pork and pretty much whatever they do. So I asked her, how much guarantee do you have? So like, what do you think if somebody broke the rules and somebody refuses to follow the Judaism laws as the official Judaism government? What do you think the government's going to do? And she told me, I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, I don't know. It depends how the Orthodox Jews feel, because some Orthodox Jews have told me if anybody disagrees with the laws or anything, they have right to punish. Now, how will they punish them? I do not know. Punishment is punishment. Some people chose death penalty. Punishment is punishment. No matter if you're a radical Christian, radical Muslim, radical Jew. I mean, early days of USSR, which is now Russia, later throughout the years, it became Russia when the UN got involved. Women, if they chose their freedom or almost anything, they would be put in jail. Okay? They had no right to breathe. They had no right to choose almost any of their rights. They were literally put in jail. Somebody just type USSR one day, or I'll stream it if somebody wants me to. Life with USSR as female was no different than the Ayatollahs. People feel like, oh, but no, there's no possible. Boy, in the early days of the empire, study Spain, some of these ancient empires, how much political power did they use on their own people? Now, when I see this all the time, later when America came into the picture, which is why some percent America is hated. America believed in freedom. America believed people should be the way that they want to be. But the early leaders, before America was made, they did not believe in those things. They warred anybody different. They kill anybody who had a different perspective. And it's not just one perspective. USSR that's now Russia, was Orthodox Christianity. And if you read how women were treated, it will give you a perspective what exactly happened in the past. So this is where I say he's a little bit incorrect, racist Islam. No, it's how you rules. It's just Israel is a mini version of America, even though some people are bombing it right now, like hate, like crazy. But if you put religion into the picture and Orthodox Jews rule it with their laws, I don't know. Let's say I wanted to break a law, the Judaism law living in Israel, or somebody they wanted to eat pork, even though the Torah says you cannot eat pork, and they wanted to do it anyway. I don't know how I'll be punished. I don't know what penalties they're going to give me. I don't know. But people have done these things before. They have. It's not the first time. It's centuries. People just have not read enough about other countries before America was ever made and how stuff has worked.
Islam grew by blood. Islam grew by force. Islam attacked countries, and Muhammad took part in.
Okay, that is incorrect. Okay, let's review this one last time. Judaism came first, but it didn't expand. Their tribes did. If they expanded, they would be holding more land today. They would be holding more land today more lands linked to Judaism today. This is where historically he is incorrect. Okay? Some say Christianity came through the Romans, and of course the pagan fight is starting from Europe and all that expansion, right? I keep that stuff away because I would rather have a Christian next to me interpret what's right and what's not right based on what they share, right? That's another chapter. Now, Islam came through Arabs just as Jews for Judaism. The only difference is Judaism didn't spread by fighting pagans. If they fought the pagans, there would be more Jews today and more land linked to Jews. But Christianity and Islam fought pagans. Native Americans were not Christians before. They were Native Americans. Berbers were converted through Islam because Berber were also pagans. Zoroastrians, pagans. You can look this up. This is not me making this up. All these people were pagans. And if you look in history today, there's very few pagan people left. One of them, the biggest one that still exists today, is from India. Hinduism is not part of the Abrahamic blood faith at all, right? This is where he's incorrect. So just like I demonstrated before, that you're either a Zoroastrian or a Christian. You cannot be both because they come from separate religious backgrounds. Those are the pagan ancestry backgrounds. You are the Abrahamic background. Cannot connect. So what are you? Either you're Zoroastrian or a Christian. You're Zoroastrian or a Muslim, and Arabs spread Islam just like Christians expanded Christianity on the pagans. Arabs expanded Islam. Only Judaism didn't do that. Otherwise, there would be more lands linked to Jews today, more stuff linked to Jews. They spread the tribe, but they never fought for land. For land, you need to convert the people to Judaism to make people more Jewish. And they didn't do that. Only Christianity and Arabs, Islam did. Moroccans, as I said before on Twitter to a content creator named Bajinta, Berber were pagans. Zoroastrians were pagans. Natives were pagans. So you're either a Christian or a Zoroastrian. You're either a Muslim or a Zoroastrian. You're either a Muslim or a Berber. You cannot connect. So what are you? This is where I completely disagree with him.
In 29 offensive battles, not even one of them was defensive, and he basically forced people to convert to Islam. And if he didn't, he beheaded them. And that's why ISIS and Boko Haram behead.
These organizations, okay? Now you need to read a little bit behind them. I was studying, if you look up a source, that these are radical organizations. Yes, they fought who gets to control the Muslim lands, which is the flags. However, some of the Catholics that lived at the time during ISIS, Shia Muslim helped them build. This is an article, by the way. You can look it up. The Shia Muslims helped Catholics rebuild the church. And Sunni flags, they helped Jews survive the Holocaust. All those flags that I showed on my picture, they have a chapter together too. Radical organizations are radical. No matter what you do, they're going to stay like that. Look at USSR. How it's preaching today in 2026. Preaching in religion. You have to beat Ukraine because religion says so. You have to finish Ukraine because religion says so. When there's no such thing. Why does USSR, as in Russia, want Ukraine? You have to read about it. But they're using religion as a tool that we are officially going to take Ukraine because a religion narrative says so. And when you launch to radicalize people with the narrative, they fall for it, but that's not the whole history itself. And that's my biggest debate with ex-Muslims. That's not history itself. No, it isn't, because I'll say this one last time. Zoroastrian, Christian. Zoroastrian, Muslim. You cannot be a Zoroastrian Christian. You cannot be a Berber and a Muslim. These are pagan ancestry religions that were there before the conversion of Christianity and Islam. If Jews did the same thing today, there would be more Jewish lands, more Jews in history today, but they never spread like that. They never did. And in the early ancient empire days, when they were offered, like, okay, why don't you become a Christian and be one of us? Or why don't you convert to Islam, be one of us? They always rejected it, but they never did it either. That's the only difference. So this is where I do not agree with him what he's saying, because you need to understand the ancient past religions. The religions also have a divide. The pagan religions don't accept the Abrahamic religions.
People. It's not like they didn't invent this in their head. They do it because their prophet did it.
Yes.
You know? Yes. And so did Ali. And Ali was so famous for beheading people that he had a sword and his sword had a name, and the sword was called Zulfiqar. Can you imagine? And this is the truth of Islam. Okay, I'm not having a go at all Muslims. I have family members.
No, I respect him. He's not incorrect. He's absolutely right. So according to what he said for the Shia Caliphate, that I posted a picture. It's in there. How it clearly says we're going to expand and expand and expand. The Shia Caliphate Arabs are not the biblical Arabs. Let me say that loud and proud. No, they are not. Their expansion to the Caliphate. So, for example, if you guys all remember, like how I was saying this, if you guys remember when the rockets attacked, the IRGC attacked the Gulf, and people asked me like, oh, but they were made by the British and the UK. Dude, I'm like, yes, they're a country now. They were named something else in the Bible, but they were there. The Arabs were there. I mean, come on. The land of where Jesus got baptized, this is a historic ancient place in Jordan, if you want to see where Jesus got baptized. Why wouldn't that land be biblical? Why wouldn't that land fight for its ancient ancestry linked to Jesus being baptized there? These are all biblical lands. But the lands that are like Shia, the Shia tribe Arabs, they're not biblical Arabs. And their job, just like how he's saying, is to expand and expand, versus the actual Arabs who refuse to accept the caliphate.
That are Muslim. My granddad was a great Muslim. He was a Hafiz. He had memorized the whole of the Quran, and he was the loveliest, sweetest guy. So I'm not having to go at Muslims. I'm sure there's a majority of Muslims that are good people. However, Islam as an ideology is extremely dangerous.
Yes.
And you would only understand that if you read the Quran.
The way Iranians lived it, yes. Yes. Half of the basic one. The basic one, I say this is the basic one of the leaders who chose to delete their Arab identity where the languages came from, and you choose to adopt the Persian culture and launch your own narrative, which would be the Shia narrative, then yeah, if eventually in the future, if you ever find out where the stuff comes from, you're going to have a hellhole of a disagreements, and that's Younas today.
And you read the hadiths and you look at the life of Muhammad. And another thing is that not only Islam grew by force, once you join it, then you can't leave. So you're an apostate, right? And if you're born into it, you can't leave.
Well, actually, let me say something. This is recent. You guys all remember Nima, right? And I'm asking a lot of my friends, some people, like one or two, few people do agree with him and few people don't agree with him, right? So I asked my Jewish friend, like, hey, you know, he's an Iranian Jew. Why do you guys hate him so much? Like, what's wrong? Oh, he's not a real Jew. He, like, based on his disagreement and views, they started calling him that he's not a real Jew. I understand he said stuff about like Ashkenazis and a couple other Jews. Well, Muslims are the same thing. If you do something different according to the laws and things like that, then suddenly you're not a Muslim anymore. Or like how he's saying that force naturally comes from the parents. So like, just like Jews prefer Jewish parents, they would prefer their children marrying someone Jewish. They would say that, okay, we would rather have you marry someone Jewish. Some people are stricter and say, okay, you're not a Jew anymore. How could you betray the religion? Well, Muslims are the same way. Okay, I know Israel's advanced and stuff, but historically, the Jews that I met who are really religious, they would advise their children to marry someone Jewish. And if they disagree, yes, they fear what their parents are going to think of them, that, hey, don't have freedom. I want to marry someone different who's not a Jew. Okay, well, it has to convert. Same policy. Stupid as silly it may sound, same policy. Oh, it has to convert.
Then you're an apostate. So I was born into it. I never had the choice to be a Muslim or not.
Yes.
You know, so now if I leave it, I'm an apostate. You know, and this happens in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iran. If they realize that you've converted to another religion, if you're a Christian or if you're an atheist, they will kill you. Like this happens. This is in their laws. You know.
Do you think that? I mean, I think I know the answer to this question, but that there is an extraordinary amount of willful naivety in countries like Britain about Islam, the religion, if you like.
Yeah, there is. And again, this is the unholy marriage of wokeism and Islamism. So the woke culture tries to pretend, you know, like these queers for Palestine, for example, like queers are killed in Palestine. How can you have queers for Palestine? And they think that criticizing Islam or criticizing any foreign idea is racist or is Islamophobic or is xenophobic or it's sexist, or and they give you these labels.
Well, I'm not going to to say he's wrong. It's just those who know actual history. Remember my last podcast with the what's his name, Dan, and I showed the Muslim journalist debate with Mehdi Hassan, who's a Shia Muslim. It's just those who know this stuff, what I'm showing you on my screen. If you do not, or sit with the right educated people, and I mean one like Dr. Huda, he even got along with Nima, an Iranian Jew, and listened to his perspective as an Iranian. They have their own differences and they set jokes too. If you just listen and share your opinions and differences, then you learn more as deep as you go. But if you don't look into the deep education, where does all these stuff come from based on even what the ex-Muslims are saying, then yeah, you're just going to look like an idiot who's not understanding why they're saying that. What's the perspective? Did something happen? What happened in their past that they're doing those things? And a lot of I would say I've only met like one or two Palestinian that's really educated, but in a perspective, I don't think I met one that's fully aware of ancient history, even though they are from the Levant days, which is they're not linked to Jordan. Some they say they are. No, they are not linked to Jordan. They're part of the Levant, and yes, they are linked to Jews as well, just like other Arabs are. But their history has changed many times, and not many people know the actual history, because I feel Palestinians don't know their own history versus what Hamas has ever told them. Just like how some people feel that Iran is all Persia and it's just Persia. No, there's more people before Persia, before and after. And that requires reading, that requires studying. And then in order to understand the Kurdish people, you need to study what's the divide between the Persian people and the Kurdish people. And I gave the biggest one. A Kurdish Jew is not going to be a friend to a Persian Jew. Nuh-uh. So the day an Israeli Jew says, oh, guess what? I'm going to be friends with you and I love you both. You say, oh, let's give these people a state too. The Persian Jew is not going to like you, and the Kurdish Jew is going to like, whose side are you on, Israeli Jew? This is our ancestral background. This is where we come from. Pick a side, because it is like that. There's nothing you can do about it. That's what it's like. But yeah.
In order to stop you from having a genuine discussion about things. And the whole thing is a lie. And there's a saying that if you want your society not to collapse, you have to save your society from three things: war, hunger, and lies. And wokeism leads to lies because it stops us from having a genuine conversation.
You think, though, if you look back to, in fact, the Iranian Revolution, 1979, it was hugely backed, actually, by the left in the West, the French particularly. I think that they sort of, didn't they sort of have leaflets kind of like dropped all over Iran, I think at some point, something like that. So there's always been that kind of my enemy's enemy is my friend type of thing. Going. When you look at the situation in Britain now, people are quite happy to talk about Islamism. Right? Do you think that's a cop-out? Do you think that it's actually is Islam, or is it is the threat that we might face it actually from Islamism? And how would you define?
Islamism is actually taking the word literally. That's all it is. Yes. So you can put it however you want. Yes, I'm sure 95% of Muslims, they don't follow the Quran word by word. They cherry pick. Okay? But Islamists, they follow it word by word. Right? So you can make your own conclusion on how you want to define.
Okay, that I don't agree with him. And he's probably, people are going to wonder why I don't agree with him. Okay, look, let's see if I can give an example. Okay? As much as the Shia Arabs believe that, oh, they need to war Jew and Christians in the West, right? Everybody's like terrified from that scripture. So let me ask you this. If word to word, as he says, they don't follow word to word of the Quran. So let me ask you this. Why do they feel okay for Catholics, but not other Christians? I'm probably never going to understand that. I was reading about how Shias are really loyal to Catholics, and their connection in they do have some similarities according to the Shia tribe and the Catholic tribe, right? They have some similarities with each other. So if we follow word to word what the Quran says, then what the hell is this relationship? Why? So you, as a Shia Arab, you will call the other Arab Zionists just because they fulfill their relationship with the Jews, But when the book says, like, just like I'm saying it, when the book says, oh, you do this, but you rather show empathy for Catholics compared to, well, the Jews who are actually biologically half linked to Arabs. But since they don't accept that narrative, the Shan tribe don't. So see how there's a connection here? It's all, why is the extremist places like Iran in good terms with Russia for decades? Even Spain, that those are all Christian countries. Why are you good terms with them, but you hate the West nation, which is I would say evangelical and Protestants? You hate them, but you're okay with Spain. You're okay with Russia. That Putin made an announcement. Oh, gee, if you burn the Quran, you're going to go to jail. So that's something to think about. Okay, just like how he's saying that, extremists go word to word, but why is it okay over there and it's not okay over here? Where's the miss? Is there something I missed? That why are they okay with those Christian leaders, even Catholics, but they're not okay here? Something to think about. So the book could say whatever you want, but historically you're not following. You're okay with those Christian countries, but you're not okay with this Christian country. And the way I know this, because first, my brother and cousin-in-law who came from Saudi Arabia, he's like, oh, Russia is a communist country. I'm like, it is, but I'm like, but it's Christian. It's Orthodox Christian. Not a lot of American Christians ever looked into that. It is Orthodox Christian. In the early days of when the Orthodox Christians were Jews for not converted. And his child, who's going to a school now, literally told him, no, Dad, it is a Christian country. So if the book says so, why are you okay over there, but you are not okay with Americans? That's something to really think about. But yeah.
Find that. But also another thing that I want to say is that, Christianity also committed a lot of atrocities. All religions did. However, the difference between Christianity and Islam were those two differences. The first reason is that Christianity went through its own reform and through its own age of enlightenment and its own age of Renaissance. And 300-400 years ago, Galileo was taught, the scientist Galileo was tortured and killed by the church because he suggested the world is round, because he said the world is flat. And also people like the guy that done evolution, sorry, what's his name? I forgot. Darwin also said, well, we evolved, and in the church said, well, no, that's we're created. So the same thing needs to happen to Islam. All religions have something good to say and something bad to say. But then the problem is with Muslims.
He's not incorrect. He's absolutely right. There's a good and bad in every history. People just are not reading enough, but yeah.
Muslims is that they believe that, oh, this is the word of Allah. This is the word of God. And no man.
Okay, I'm going to translate, okay? Let's see how people. This is the word of Jesus, and I have to repent to Jesus. This is the word of Yeshua. I have to repent what Yeshua is saying. If I break one law, I am disobeying Yeshua, so depending on what type of parents I have. If I break a word of Islam, depending how my parents are, what they educate me, what school did they send me. Oh, you, just like I was saying it, this is the word of Islam, you have to obey. All religions have interpreted this sentence, depending who your teacher is, depending what culture your parents are from, what country did they grew up in. Like, for example, UAE changed throughout time. UAE was not like that before, it changed throughout time. Saudi has changed too. And I should know, one of my cousins recently flew from Pakistan to Saudi Arabia, and she never had a complaint with it. She's doing fine. And I've seen one or two Americans flew to Saudi too. They're doing fine. But all on the interpretation and the teachers. If someone tells me I need to repent to Jesus because this is what I'm taught in Christianity based on my teacher and what is interpreting me to follow, I'm going to fall for it. Or if I have a Jewish teacher teaching me the Torah, depending on the interpretation it says of the Torah, that, hey, if I break these laws, I am no longer Jewish, and what penalties do I have to pay according to Judaism? Or same for him, what he's saying for Islam, depending on my teacher, which would be the Ayatollahs in his case, and all the interpreters there, if I break the law, what penalties do I have to pay according to Islam? Just how I'm saying. It all depends, but yeah.
Man can say anything towards that. No, yes, we can. We can pick certain parts and out and say, oh, this has no place in society. The same thing that happened to Christianity. And we need to break this in people's heads. And Muslims, another difference between Islam and Christianity is that Islam is a very militant religion. It's an extremely militant religion. There's a lot of call to action in Islam. There's a lot of call to jihad in Islam.
Okay, let's see how I can translate this, because the Ayatollahs lives on military organization. In Iraq's history, it would be Saddam Hussein by killing Prince Faisal, who was the Iraqi prince, who was also I published this in the Israeli delegation group too. Prince of Iraq, once upon a time, was a ruler. He was chosen to be the ruler of Syria, and he was also the ruler of Iraq. He was the one who welcomed the Zionist movement. I posted this like 5-6 times on my Twitter page, right? So back then, when he welcomed the Zionist movement and how he was ready to welcome Jews into Iraq and welcoming this movement that developed Israel, he was okay with all that shit. That means that whoever's Jewish over there and you want to practice, the prince is okay with it. Okay, they had Islam, it's Arabs, whatever. It was okay with it. Same for the early king of Morocco who saved Jews from the Holocaust. That, hey, I'm okay with you practicing your religion, no problem. Which is why he saved them from Hitler. Now, how did this story turn? I'll tell you how it turned. So a military organization, I forgot this guy's name. I believe his name was Qasem. Qasim killed the Prince of Iraq for making the country into a modern civilization by welcoming other faiths. In his case, Prince Reza Pahlavi got mantled the same damn way from the Ayatollahs that, hey, how could you welcome other faiths versus us first and things like that? You know, so when he says militant organization, he's so incorrect. Do you see Saudi Arabia does not have a military? No. UAE does not have a military. No. Iran does, but the UAE, no. Saudi Arabia, no. Jordan, no. In fact, these organizations that he's saying, they're actually invaded in Lebanon, Syria, somewhat Iraq today in history, didn't have that before. So Iran. So it all depends on the interpretation, what he's saying. And especially to the Shia tribe, resistance, expand. So of course they're going to have a military, but these places, just like I'm interpreting exactly what he's saying. Where's the military for Saudi Arabia? Where's the military for Jordan? Where's the military for Morocco? Where's the military for Oman? These places don't have a military. Where's the military for UAE? They don't have one. Yes, they have protection. They have things that they can defend themselves. It's not like they're completely defenseless, no. But when it comes to a serious military, they don't have one. So I'm not sure what exactly is he saying here. And I said it. A military commander killed Prince of Iraq, just like the Ayatollahs tried to terminate Prince Reza Pahlavi because he wanted to make the nation into a secular nation with other faiths, like how America is. But basically, yes.
Islam. There's also calls to action such as Muslims have a responsibility to Islamize the whole world. You know, and that's why it worries me, because it's in their religion. They believe that until the whole world isn't Muslim.
Shia tribe. I just said it. Where is it? Where's Saudi Arabia's military? Where's Jordan's military? Where Egypt has one, I believe. Where Iraq doesn't have one. Iraq has Iran's military ruling and in control, but Iraq does not have one of its own. Yes, you have rockets and some stuff to protect yourself, but a serious invasion, big military like how Pakistan has one. So this is where I disagree with it. If the scripture says so, where's the military? There isn't one. These countries don't have one. Just like how I showed the picture versus the Shia Arabs who have a military using the scripture versus the biblical Arabs. No, they do not have one. No. If they did, I'll put in simple terms, if they had their own strong military, do you really think they would waste that much money to hire Pakistan for self-defense? No. But they build their economy. They do have weapons to protect themselves and stuff. But that doesn't mean they're completely weaponless. So the only ones who has this type of shit, as he's interpreting, it is Iran.
Muslim, they shouldn't rest.
Do you think that Europe is being Islamized?
Yes, 100%.
And do you think that the West's response is feeble?
Yes.
what would it, I mean, for example, there was a poll out recently
Yeah.
showing that 32% of Muslims in Britain would prefer Sharia law.
Which is insane.
Which is, that's a third, that's quite big. And then there were many other opinions which you could call socially conservative, if you like, as well. Why do you think, or what should happen, do you think, Younas, to mount a challenge to that Islamification?
Well, first thing is dialogue and discussion and having difficult conversations.
With whom and with whom?
From leaders, from people, prominent figures, from our politicians to prominent figures that know about the subject and because one of the main things about Islam and Muslims or Islamists is that they think that if you say anything bad about Islam and something bad happens to you, that's okay. That's not okay, you know? And that's why a lot of people stay silent because they're like, well, if we say anything about Islam, then we have it coming for us. You know, they get scared for and you know, a lot of Muslims believe that, oh, if you question Muhammad or if you question Islam, and if they come and kill you, they will go to heaven. They have this belief system in their head. So that's one point. Like, we have to challenge that.
Okay, if you went to a Christian school, this is words from Christians themselves who told me. I didn't know about the KKK. Christians taught me that. If in the name of Jesus and you don't repent to Jesus, whatever the KKK was like, or the Christians in early, what is that called? Someone from India told me this. I forgot what it's called. Come on. Hit in the brain. What is it called? The cookie organization. So cookie organization is like, someone from India has told me, is that if Hindus do not convert to Christianity, they're not going to get any treatment in a Christian hospital. Now, they can get violent or whatever, however you want to prefer it. If a Hindu is not going to obey to the Christianity policies or almost anything, it is not going to get any treatment in a Christian hospital. You'd be like, what? But they told me that there is such thing. KKK, in the name of Jesus, follow whatever Christianity says. However, some say it was the Democrat, some say it was the Republic. It really doesn't matter. It's the concept of Christianity, right? Same here, based on how they interpret it and how they encouragement the violence. And I just pointed out a red flag question as much as he's saying it's a military. Well, yes, your country was a military. Iran has military power. But what about the rest? If they're Islamic, where's UAE's military? Where's Jordan's military? Where's Saudi Arabia's military? Iraq has somewhat okay. Where's Egypt has one too, and Pakistan has. What about the rest? Where's their military if the book says so? Well, just like I showed my photos, their portrait versus the Shia Arab who have a military, and they built it throughout time, which is why Lebanon is destroyed due to military intelligence. Syria is destroyed, who Prince of Iraq wanted to give a future to. It's forever destroyed. Syria is destroyed. What other territories? Lebanon, Syria, Libya, I would say somewhat. All these territories, Iraq, all these territories are forever destroyed because of the militant organizations from the IRGC. So I would say the way he's interpreting it, but at the same time, his statement is not matching history itself. I just said it. That's what the book says. Why don't these guys have a military organization according to what the book says? Red flag question.
That, okay, through our media, through people like myself, people like yourself, our politicians. But then the problem is with our politicians, they're so weak and pathetic that, first of all, they pander to the Islamic vote, A, and B, they don't want to come across Islamophobic. But there's no such thing. Look, phobia means an irrational fear of something. There's no irrational fear of Islam. And you would realize that if you read the Quran. There's no irrational fear of Islam. And you just need to go and see what happens in Afghanistan with Taliban. Go and see what happens in Pakistan. Go and see what happens with ISIS. Go and see what happens with Boko Haram. Go and see what happens with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The only country right now that I really respect is Saudi Arabia. And the reason is that the leader, Mohammed bin Salman, has...
Of course everybody's going to respect Mohammed bin Salman. He's another version of Prince Reza Pahlavi. Not many people see him like that, but yeah. And so was the Prince of Iraq. In fact, I'll share the screen. The only decent leaders that the Muslim countries have ever had, and I know who they are, and let's see what comments do I have for this. Hello, welcome to the show. Hi, I'm getting all these hellos. How you doing? So I'm going to show the only decent leaders that the Muslim countries have ever had in his history. And I think I'm going to show it. Give me a second. It's interesting what he says. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff I do agree with him. I would say one or two minor that I disagree with him. Compared to everything else, I do agree with him. So let me put it up. Okay. So Prince of Iraq. Iraq. Faisal. Prince of Iraq. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen for a minute so people can see it. And this is something you can look up yourself too. I think it's important at this time. It's just is because not a lot of the people know this stuff. They just don't share. They feel like life just started today and then many years ago it didn't. Okay, so this prince, right? This prince was the Prince of Iraq. He was another version of Pahlavi. How Iraqi, like Sarah shared, many people loved him. Many people loved Prince Faisal. He wanted to give Iraq a future. He wanted to give Iraq a better life. He's the one who welcomed the, what do you call it, Zionist movement. There were two kings named Faisal, one for Iraq, members of the Hashemite dynasty, and Faisal, who established the kingdom of British mandate, grandson of Faisal, King Faisal of Iraq, before the monarchy overthrown in a revolution. And after that, Iraq was forever destroyed. And that leader, I believe his name was Qasim. Same for Iran, when Prince Reza Pahlavi was thrown off by the Ayatollahs. So when people say Islam was already there. It's been there. It's how people are running this shit. So when Iraq, the Prince of Iraq was thrown down, for Pakistan, the best leader was Musharraf, somewhat the first female lady, Benazir Bhutto. Musharraf agreed to welcome Israel through an agreement, and that's back in the day when Jordan agreed to have like the West Bank or whatever, and Israel gave it away to Jordan. That peace agreement that Clinton was a part of, that's when Musharraf was the best leader for Pakistan, okay? There weren't any problems as they are today, okay? Now, throughout the years of Flight, Benazir Bhutto wanted to make peace with India and make a future with India, and she got killed for it. So all these leaders that I'm naming, they're the ones who wanted to make the country into a secular government, give it a better future, and then there was those who did not agree to it, and they killed these leaders. Now, who's left? Let's pray that Mohammed bin Salman survives and nothing ever happens to him in the future. Today, many, many years later, Islam is still there, but he wants to change the society. The UAE already did that. Now, the question is, are people are going to try to crash the party and kill him too? And that's what pretty much happened in the Muslim world. Whenever you thought of something different, and all these, like, why is the king of Morocco, who was once a prince who saved Jews from the Holocaust, many people call him a Zionist? Why? Because he welcomed Jews into the country. He welcomed them from the Holocaust, and you're allowed to do your practices. And even though Morocco didn't do peace till, like, I would say 2019 with this due to Trump, that doesn't mean the historical roots of Jewish people were not there. They were always there because the Holocaust and on. So these are the things people should be reviewing than to just say anything, because once upon a time, the Muslim countries did have a future until militant, radical, extremist organizations have killed this and launched their own interpretation throughout time, which is the Muslim world is still fighting today. This was the prince who welcomed the Zionist movement to welcome Jews into the country of Iraq, but he was murdered. So back to this. Now you guys know. Back to the documentary. So I have a little bit of short time left, but like I hope people have a better understanding. What I agree with, a lot of the stuff I do agree with him, and few stuff I don't. I feel based on where he's from, it's because of that. Which is not his fault, but yeah.
Realized that he cannot live by traditional laws. And he basically has had a lot of reforms in his country where he says, well, we're going to turn down the volume of the azan. You know what azan is? It's like call for prayer 5 times a day. Right. We're going to turn down the volume to 1/3. Women can drive. Women can be models. They've had their latest like swimwear models in Saudi Arabia. Women can sing, women can do everything. And these are the things that are all prohibited in Islam. So Mohammed bin Salman, the leader of a country, the birthplace of Islam, has come to this realization that if we want to bring Saudi Arabia to the 21st century, we can't be living by Sharia law. He has realized that, right? However, we have ignorant people that have immigrated to this country, and they probably escaped their country because of Sharia law.
Yes.
They escaped their country because of Sharia law. They're in the West now, and they're...
Let me tell you something. This is words from my own mother-in-law. The way leaders preach the Sharia law, actually, as much as they preach it on their citizens, they don't follow it themselves either. The politicians, I give the biggest example. One of the Sharia law policies is business and how people make money. Who's making the money? Ding, 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 ding. Politicians are. The people are not making shit. That's why the Muslim countries look into a dump hole. Red flag number one, preaching Sharia, Sharia, Sharia. But the leaders themselves follow Sharia law, what it actually says. One of them is support your community, help your community build. Do the politicians do that? No.
They're so stupid, frankly, and ignorant that they think that somehow what they escaped from, they can bring here and make here hell as well. And I just don't understand how they cannot breach that thing in their minds, you know?
When we've seen huge demonstrations ongoing still, obviously, since October the 7th. When you look at those, it does seem, first of all, people seem extraordinarily confident in what they're calling for, you know, whether it's jihad or it's anti-Israel or whatever it is. But also, when you look at it, it does seem, I'm going back to this point about our response, the police seem to have sort of almost accepted that they can't really do anything about it, or rather that they won't. Is that your impression too?
It is. I know there's also a degree of political correctness and weak leadership, because if there was a neo-Nazi rally in central London, everyone would be arrested within 10 minutes. So I don't understand how people can come and ask for jihad or ask for the eradication of Israel and shout river to the sea. And I think Sadiq Khan has something to do with it, because I think he panders to the Islamic vote in London, and he always hides behind the excuse of Islamophobia. As I said, there's no such thing as Islamophobia. I'm a quarter Pakistani myself, as I said. But I don't play identity politics, and I think these politicians in the UK, they play a lot of identity politics, unfortunately. And another thing is that I read this study, is that actually the youth born in the UK, Muslims born in the UK, they tend to be more extreme than the ones that are born in the Middle East. And
that I'm going to give him applause for. Bravo, Younas. Bravo. That is 100% true. The UK Muslims are douchebag Muslims. They're more extremist than the actual Muslims from the Middle East. Muhammad Hijab, what's that other journalist's name? Salman or something like that, and that other guy who Dr. Huda debated, he is so 100% right. Bushra, the girl that I hate the most, my brain dies on Twitter yelling at that girl. I wonder what happened to her, by the way. Did Twitter cook her off? I haven't seen her post lately, but he is so freaking right. UK Muslims are the most stupidest Muslims. They're more extremer than the Middle East Muslims themselves. Boy, did he just hit the red flag thing. You are so right.
my only conclusion to that is that because these people haven't seen what Islam can do to a society, they tend to be more extreme because they haven't seen it with their own eyes what Sharia law can do. And Sharia law includes laws like chopping of hands and feet. That's the type of laws, stoning women for adultery, killing women for being raped, not for raping, for being raped, because well they were probably had it coming to them, but they were dressed too openly. Yes. So all these things, these are all Sharia law. Yeah. And I don't understand why people, like when people say that, I don't know why. It's like saying, like a neo-Nazi comes to the street and says, well, we should kill all Jews. Yeah, that's the same when someone says Sharia law to me. Yeah.
Do you, I mean, so presumably in terms of like, if one wants to counter the kind of growing Islamification, you're saying it's all about, basically about talking and about dialogue. We have a lot of talking and a lot of dialogue. You mentioned there the weakness of our politicians. I mean, you are a political commentator. When you look at the scene in Britain now, I mean, what is your impression? I mean, we're in the middle of an election. This is going out while we're still in the middle of an election. What is your view of how the election has been, for example?
Well, it gets me depressed. I feel like our politicians
are you following it even?
Yes, I am following the Reform Party. I'm actually working with them in communication strategy at the moment. I'm a big fan of Nigel Farage. I feel like he's the last breed of charismatic politician, an honest politician that we have, even though the mainstream media attacks him all the time. However, I still think he can't do it by himself, you know, and I see the Labour Party and I just find them so extremely pathetic, frankly, and they try to pander to both sides. They try to pander to the woke LGBTQ crowd, and at the same time they try to pander to the Islamists, which is that complete juxtaposition, you know? And then we have the Conservatives, which have been a failure for the last 14 years. They're going to lose. Reform is leading the Conservatives now in the polls. Then we have other parties which are, again, so politically correct and robotic, like the Green Party, the Lib Dems, and they all have the same talking points. And I really do think this is a watershed moment. I really do think people like myself, and presumably yourself, and Nigel Farage and others, proper people need to stand up and speak up, you know?
You're 30, is that right?
Yes, 30 years old.
One of the things that we
I'm 38. It's funny how the no ex-Muslims are a lot younger than me. The only one who's 1 year younger than me is Dan. But like, as I said, the people who are like in their 60s, their 70s and 80s, it's really important to talk to those people because early ancient time has an impact to what is leadership today. You need to review everything from the previous stuff to understand what is leadership today, what has changed, and what have leadership encouraged them themselves. And a lot of the people don't know that. As I said, I'm not saying he's wrong because 90% of the stuff said he is right, but it's just based on what he knows and what his country taught him compared to early stuff of the past. That's not him to blame. I'm not going to blame him, but the truth is, it's still out there. As he said, the first interpretation that Islamic is a military. Okay, if it's a military, where is Jordan's military? Where is Saudi's military? Where is UAE's military? Yet they have some minor. I'm not going to say they don't have anything at all. They do. But when it comes to deep, deep military power, that's Iran. His country had one according to the caliphate, while others, due to different views, and building their country, building a better future of their country, just like I showed the pictures, they didn't focus on this stuff. They focused on building a community. And when he says like, oh, gee, they believe in killing all these people, but okay, if you believe based on what the scripture has told you, what are you doing with Christian countries like Spain? What are you doing with Christian countries with like Russia? What are you doing with all these like places like Hungary and all these other Christian countries, but you have a problem with the West? You're okay with Germany, you're okay with UK, but you have a problem with the West. That's where you be like, okay, now wait a minute, the scripture does not make sense. Why am I over here, but I'm not allowed to be over here? That requires deep behind the door digging. Then I guess based on where he grew up from and what he know from it, if it hit him sooner, he'd probably look in. But since he never looked into this point of view, so he's probably not going to talk the way I am because I looked from all corners. But yeah.
Discussed a lot on this channel is that younger people, I don't mean to sound condescending, but younger people are in this country the most left-wing that they've ever been. But the difference is that they're not becoming more conservative when they like get a house and a family. They're staying that way. I mean, what do you sense in your peers, you know, the people that you mix with? I mean, are they very much, would they vote for reform too or not?
You'd be surprised. I think there's a silent majority in this country. And I think actually a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people do, unless they're brainwashed by whatever they've been brainwashed with, whether it is the woke mentality or the Islamism. And you have to realize that our institutions, such as our university, have been hijacked by these left-wing neo-Marxist ideologies. And when I was in university, as you said, I came out of university like almost a socialist, believe it or not, and I was a very left-wing guy. And the same thing happened to me. As I started working, I became more and more conservative,
Right.
to the point I would say I'm center-right now. I'm a capitalist. I believe in free markets. I believe in freedom of speech. But also, another change that has happened is that now we have the reason why young people tend to be left-wing, because old school liberal values advocated for freedom of speech, for freedom of expression, for libertarian values, which is freedom. Now we have the authoritarian left. So the things have switched in a way. Because before it was the right wing that tended to be more authoritarian and the left wing that seemed to be more libertarian. And now it's the opposite. It's the right wing. And you can see that with Trump, for example. He's more right wing, but he's more libertarian. He believes in free markets. He believes in freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And now the left wing is the one that tries to cancel you. Cancel culture. If you say something, you're fired.
Yes. Also, the other thing as well, I mean, is that the one thing that unites the left now is an utter contempt for working class people. You know, this is one of the biggest changes. They don't even bother to disguise it. You know, and which is one of the most unremarked upon things currently in politics. Well, politics then. So, do you see yourself? I mean, where is this leading to for you? Would you want to be a politician?
Hopefully one day, sure. I would like to, and I want to be in media. I want to make a difference. I want to have my own show, if possible. I would like to be on TV. I would like to interview important people, and hopefully I can get into politics, whether it is in the UK as an MP, and I will try to go up that ladder and maybe prime minister. And then what I have in mind is that once Iran is freed, I want to be part of the opposition that goes and takes back Iran, because Iran, one of the reasons why the mullahs have stayed in power for so long is that the opposition to them is very weak.
Right.
Like we have this guy called Shahzadeh Reza Pahlavi, which is the grandson of Reza Shah. And he's been in LA for 45 years, and millions of people know him, but I just find him very weak.
Right.
I find him very weak, very uncharismatic. And every time people ask him, well, do you want to go back to Iran and take it? And they say, oh, I'm going to help out.
Yes, yeah.
You either want the job or you don't want the job, you know? And I also think there's also divisions, like some people support Reza Shah Pahlavi, Shahzadeh Reza Pahlavi, and then some other people support some. So there's like a mixture of left wing and right wing. We all need to unite.
Yes.
We all need to unite so we have a proper opposition to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I hope to be part of that opposition. And so once the Islamic Republic of Iran collapses, then we have actually a team of people that can go and take over the country.
What's the likelihood of that happening, do you think? Collapse?
Well, look, it depends on multiple different things. First thing that it will help is that Trump is elected, because once Trump was
Okay, I'm coming. Okay.
in
So like,
2016,
guys,
the Republic
okay,
of Iran was in a very
I
weak
have to
position.
get ready to go, but like, I have to end the show. I wish I could go more, but I have to go take my daughter to speech. The time went too quickly with you guys. I'm probably going to come again this week. So like, come to conclusion, if people understood this documentary, there's a lot of things I actually ethical points he made throughout time. A lot of his perspective being an Iranian and a Muslim himself, and how Iran was before and after. The only thing I disagreed with is, I guess he should have told a little bit more about Iran than just one point of perspective. And it's important for people to know those things, because in order for people to educate what really happened to Iran, they wouldn't know. Like, not a lot of people know the Kurdish history. And yes, I'm Muslim. Not a lot of people know the Kurdish history. And the translation of the book, how he's told only Islam know. Just like how I said, if the scripture says so, where is the military for all these other countries? And why is your military taking over and they don't have their own? And why do they look clean, but you don't? All that stuff counts. Then comes the leadership. Then comes the time trail of the past, what divided the Arab world and who stole whose identity. So all that stuff counts. So I hope people have a better understanding. And guys, I have to get ready to stream because my mom's here. I have to take my daughter to stream. The speech. So I hope you guys understand. We were to the conclusion almost based on what he's saying, but this is probably the first ex-Muslim I agree to his perspective. compared to the previous ones I did. It's just he's 30 and I feel he should have been told a lot more, but then I don't blame him either because that's what the country taught him. And then he learned in age 30 a little bit more compared to me being 38. And yeah, it's all on country preferences. What do they tell you? But in the end, as the older you get, the more stuff you find out. Best way I could put it. Take care, you all.